This video is brought to you by Insightful Player Book and Game, both of which feature inspiring stories of NFL role models.
This is Tina Derby, and I am filling in for Chris Biscup, who normally does these interviews, which is why I'm a little bit tongue-tied. But anyhow, today I am talking with Kevin Reilly, who is a former NFL player and you worked at Xerox, and now you are retired and you do motivational speaking. Is that all accurate, correct?
Yeah, I do motivational speaking. I also do a lot of football broadcasting. I broadcast college games in the CAA division, University of Delaware, Villanova, Richmond. I do that on Saturdays, and I also do the pre and post game for the Philadelphia Eagles on WIP and WYSP radio. And I've been doing that for the last 14 years and really love doing that kind of work. It's my passion.
Nice to stay in the industry that you kind of started in.
Well, on Saturdays and Sundays, I have to prepare during the week. I don't think people know how much work goes into broadcasting, but especially when you're facing rosters of, 60 guys on each team in college and 45 on each team, you have to know how to pronounce their names and stuff. And my kids tell me that if I'd have spent that much time studying in college, I could have really amounted to something.
I love it. I think you did okay, though, even though maybe you didn't spend enough time studying in college. So you went to Villanova, right?
Went to Villanova University, right up the street from where I live in Wilmington, Delaware. But it was a different world, a different city, and a different state, and met a lot of very interesting people from all over the country. And they're like family up there. So it was really neat going to a university that large at that time and also being that close to home. Had benefits both ways.
Now, did you live on campus when you were there?
Oh yeah, I was a scholarship athlete, and they're required to live on campus and abide by all the rules and everything that go along with that. But it was a great experience.
Oh, that's very cool. Now, so in high school, I don't actually know a lot about your high school experiences, but maybe you could even go over that. Like, what was maybe the quick synopsis of like from when you were born to when you got to college?
Well, I was the oldest of 6 kids, and we grew up in your typical suburban family during the 1950s. And 1960s, which I'd still believe was the greatest age to grow up as a kid. There was just a lot of things to do. It was a safer world. But I was just really, really involved with sports. I would have played any sport at any time, anywhere. And I became a pretty good athlete through grade school. I went to a high school called Salesianum. It's an all-boys Catholic high school in Wilmington, Delaware. It's still all boys. My son graduated from there, and now I have 2 stepsons that are going there, so the connection's very strong. And I played 3 sports there. I was the captain of the football team, captain of the basketball team, and I was a catcher on the baseball team. So I went on and matriculated to Villanova on a 4-year scholarship. And while I was there, I was really fortunate not to have any injuries. And as a result of having a pretty good career at Villanova as a linebacker, I was drafted in the 7th round by the world champion Miami Dolphins. And that was quite a hoot for me. Imagine 22 years old and being in a locker room with guys that you had been reading about in Sports Illustrated since you were a junior in high school. It's a little intimidating, but it's part of my whole story of you got to believe in yourself and that the human spirit is tougher than anything that can face it. And I realized that these guys put their pants on one leg at a time, just like I do. I started to believe I could belong, and ended up not making the Dolphins team, but was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. I played for 3 years and then finally 1 year with the New England Patriots.
So let's see. So you did the NFL thing for quite a while. Now, how'd you get into Xerox? Because, that's...
Yeah, well, you never know how long you're going to play in the NFL. And as a result of, an injury that I had, I only lasted 4 years. And by the way, the level of athleticism at that area, I tell people when I was in grade school, I was totally dominant as an athlete. When I was in high school, I was dominant. In college, I was mostly dominant. And in the NFL, I was seldom dominant.
Yep, exactly.
The level of competition is really keen up there. And so you're only an injury or two, as even the good athletes will find, from being retired. So I found myself very quickly retired from the NFL, hoping to get back in, but I had what I considered a serious shoulder injury that I thought I could overcome, which I found out became much more drastic than I ever anticipated. And I had just built a house, and the only thing that I could think of that I could do to make the kind of money I was making in the NFL, which wasn't much in those days, was to go into sales. And I interviewed with a couple sales organizations, and Xerox offered me a job, and I went to work for them and ended up having a 30-year career with them.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So that's kind of nice when you can stick with one company that long. It doesn't really happen much today. So the injury you were talking about, the football injury that turned out, is that what turned out to be the cancer that you ended up having that ended that career, that one career?
Yeah, I started to notice a weakness in my left shoulder when I was weightlifting and when I was also, in training camp taking on blockers. And I got released by the New England Patriots, and I thought I'd have a year to rehabilitate. And I went back to heavy lifting again and trying to strengthen my shoulder. And when I found a little bump in my shoulder, to make a long story not so long, this tumor, it's a very rare scar tissue that I got as a result of the trauma that I had in the NFL. You played with injuries back in the 70s, and there was a lot of guys found out because that was just what you had to do and needed to do. And I didn't think it was serious at the time, but I kept tearing open a tear in my rotor cuff area, and this tumor developed. This tumor was called a desmoid tumor. It's very rare, but it will overgrow and it will take over space in the body, and it will strangle blood supplies and organs. And as a result of that, about 18 months after I retired from the NFL, in order to save my life, they had to remove my left arm, my left shoulder, and 5 ribs in order to get all of the tumor. They had to get big margins. So, that was part of the story, Tina, is in 1976, here I was playing in the NFL, and I can remember like yesterday, in 1974, I was playing on Monday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys at home. They introduced the special teams in front of the home crowd. I got this enormous ovation because I was a hometown guy. We win the game on a last-second field goal. I'm 25 years old. I weigh 235 pounds. I have a 400-pound bench press. I'm living a dream. And as my kids would say, not, because 5 years later, I wake up in Sloan Kettering Hospital after the amputation of my arm, shoulder, and ribs, and I'm fighting for my life. And, you figure, gosh, how did it go from being that good to being this bad? And so
Right.
that's what I had to deal with.
Right. And that was that like a shock for you? Was it, I mean, it had to have been, I feel like that, it's physical trauma, obviously, but also the mental trauma, I would think, because you weren't really, I would imagine, prepared mentally for that, were you? Or how was it?
Oh, I don't think you were ever prepared. I also, at that time, I had 3 children then, 2, 1, and an infant. And, you wonder, my biggest fears were, will I have a job? First of all, will I beat
Right.
this thing? Because they told me that it would be 10 years before I would be out of the woods with this sort of tumor, because it had a tendency to come back, years after the operation. So
Right.
that was a big cloud. And then how do I make a living? What could I do? One of the good things was I didn't lose my dominant arm, which is another problem in itself. I didn't have to relearn how to write and stuff. But a very well-meaning guy came into my hospital room, and he was an amputee. And it's amazing how, as a positive message he was trying to give me, and he was trying to counsel me, that he actually depressed me, because all he pointed out was the things that I would be unable to do. He pointed out that I would have trouble driving. He pointed out that I would have trouble, with my balance. He recommended that I didn't do any jogging right away because of the stress it might put on my back. Then he asked what kind of job I had. When I told him that I worked for Xerox, he wanted to know what I had to wear to work each day. And when I told him I had to wear, a coat and a tie and tie shoes, and he told me that I'd have to get these special shoes because I'd never be able to tie shoes again. And then he told me that I would have to get these special clip-on ties. And he had one on to show me, and it was one of those clip-ons that I had worn as a kid. And I said, why will I have to get tie shoes? And he said, well, you'll never be able to tie your shoes again. It can't be done one-handed. I've been trying for 25 years. He said, and how about the clip-on ties? Why will I have to get clip-on ties? Oh, he laughed. He said, you'll never be able to tie a tie again. It can't be done one-handed. Believe me, I've been trying to do that for 25 years. So when this expert guy left my hospital room, I thought, there must be 3,000 things I can't do. And that's when I was interrupted by a guy by the name of Rocky Blyer, a former Pittsburgh Steeler who I knew a little bit. And this is one of the great things about team sports, the camaraderie. Here was a guy that I knew a little bit that knew that I was in trouble, and he was a Vietnam vet before he became a very famous football player, and he's got 4 Super Bowl rings. And he had a bad knee injury in Vietnam where they told him he'd never play football again. And here's a guy wearing 4 Super Bowl rings. So I listened to him because he had been there. He had overcome something. And he said to me I won't go through the conversation, but it was very uplifting because I was depressed after this man left my room telling me about all of the handicaps that I would meet. And I wasn't ready for words like handicap. I wasn't ready for words like amputee. But that's what I was. And that's what I had to live with. But Rocky was the saving grace. He got me in a mindset that you're tougher than this. He was the first one to say to me, remember this, that the human spirit is tougher than anything that can happen to it. I want to repeat that. The human spirit is tougher than anything that can happen to it. You have it. I have it. Everybody out there listening has it. It's waiting for you to draw upon it. And then he challenged me he said, you must promise me no matter what that guy told you. I said, wait a minute, Rock. I said, that guy's an expert. He's been without an arm for 25 years. Rocky replied, let me tell you something about experts, Kevin. Experts built the Titanic and amateurs built the Ark. Experts can be wrong. And I never forgot that. And after I promised him that I wouldn't quit on anything until I tried it 3 times, he sent me this poem, and he said, I want you to commit this to memory. And then when you get exasperated over trying something over and over again, instead of just stepping back and counting to 10, say this little poem. And I want to share it with you. It goes like this. If you think you're beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost a cinch that you won't. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can win the prize. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For in this world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in a state of mind. Remember, life's battles don't always go to the biggest, fastest, or strongest man. But sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. So I took that philosophy forward, and I found out it was difficult, but it wasn't impossible. And I've been able to do things that people didn't think I would do. I mean, for the poor volunteer, Frank told me I'd never be able to tie a tie again. My whole message was that I learned a valuable lesson from the experience. And I take this lessons with me when I've gone to Walter Reed or back to Sloan Kettering or even the Children's Hospital with people who are amputees or facing what they think is a really big change in their life.
Exactly. And it's certainly a change, but it doesn't necessarily even, I think, have to be, maybe I'm a little inappropriate saying this, but a change for the worse. It's a change. I remember that I read something that Albert Einstein had said, because he was very unpopular as a kid and he was told that he wouldn't amount to anything, and I mean, it's Albert Einstein, right? And he was very depressed and told his family that he just, shouldn't even bother. And then he said, actually it turned out probably to be a good thing that I was such a sort of awkward kid that nobody was friends with and nobody liked, because it made me think a lot about things that normal kids would never have thought about. And so this is how I came up with all these things that I've sort of, discovered or whatever. So things that can look like maybe they're really a horrible thing can have a really good sort of silver lining almost. Do you think that's fair? I mean, that's kind of my assessment of.
No, I'm a very faith-driven guy, and I really believe that, we have a purpose on this earth, and that if we believe in God's will and try to follow that it usually turns out for the better. I tell people, excuse me, that when people pray to God, they ask for things. God has 3 answers, not 2. Yes, no, and not right now. And sometimes it's the not right now that we're not patient with as human beings, that we have to wait.
Yeah, exactly. And you just have to trust that. You may not understand why, but just stick with him. He kind of knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. So now when you talked to this, what was his name? Was Rocky?
Rocky Blyer.
Rocky, okay. And he told you these things. Now, it is, obviously you have to start with being told different ways of thinking or, whatever, inspirational things. But then to actually implement that, to change the behavior, the habits you have of thinking maybe a different way, can take some time. It's like changing any habit. Old habits die hard. Did you find that to be sort of something that you had to sort of consciously think about sometimes, and sometimes did you kind of get down a little bit, but then it was like, no, I got to remember what Rocky told me. I got to stay up. Or was it just sort of magic for you, and all of a sudden, you're like, oh, okay.
I wish I could say it was magic. There's no magic in it. It's a lot of hard work. But the one thing that I was used to as an athlete was setting goals. If I was weightlifting, I'd set a bench press goal. If I was running, I'd set a goal that I wanted to run the mile. When I got into the NFL, I set a goal that I wanted to be the best special team player that I could be on the team. And so I always was goal oriented, and I was a little bit of a list maker on how to get to those goals, because you can have a goal, but you have to have a plan. And
right.
If you have a plan, there's three things that I think are important. Setting the goals that are realistic, but maybe a little beyond your reach. Don't be afraid to reach. Yeah. The second thing is having a plan to get to those goals. And the third most important thing is consistent persistence. Mm-hmm. Staying after something time and time again, because you're going to have little setbacks. If it was all that easy, everybody would do it. And if you can just deal with the little setbacks and consistently, continue on, persistence. I have seen people with less talent, with less brain power, with less athletic ability, overachieve those with more in all three categories because they just kept after it.
Exactly. Right. I mean, it's amazing how easy that whole idea is. And you hear that again and again and again. Research a lot and talk to a lot of, people that have really made it very big. And you just hear that theme constantly. I don't think there's one person that just said, oh, yeah, I went out and I was really great and I just did it and, it was easy. It just doesn't happen. It's not life.
Well, and that brings me back, Tina, that's a very good point, because that brings me back to when I'm talking to young people, and even when I'm talking to adults who have given up on pursuing goals because they're at a certain age. And I challenge them. I mean, these are difficult economic times, but I challenge people to say, hey, these are the times that you button your chin strap and you stop waiting around for something good to happen. Too many people in America sit and wait for something good to happen. You have the human spirit. I'm going to mention it again. It's in everybody. You don't have to wait for a crisis in order to see just how valuable a tool it is. You can set the human spirit to work tomorrow. Set a goal, get a plan, go after your plan. It's 3 simple steps. And I find that whether you're an adult or a young kid, I know that there's kids out there that are listening to this that are growing up in households that are in chaos. And you go, look, this is a good excuse for me not to be able to meet my goals. I want to tell you something. It's a challenge, but if you set goals, you have a plan, and you consistently and have persistence, you will achieve more than you would ever believe.
Absolutely. So true. So true. And that's a really good point about the plan. And do you think that sometimes you can make a plan and then things come up in life that maybe you have to tweak that plan a little bit? You have to, in business world, they call it pivot, where, okay, so I was going to get a job at such and such a store, but all of a sudden my family moved to some other place, so now I have to change my plan up a little. But you still have the same end goal of, I want to achieve being in the NFL or being on radio or TV or the internet now, I guess, or whatever. And I guess it's like when we write business plans, because I do a lot of that kind of thing with the consulting work I do, where we write this plan, but it's not set in stone. I'm probably going to have to tweak it a little bit, but that's okay. We're still, working towards the same goal, and we still have a plan.
I think another valuable point. If there was one corollary to this or complement to the 3 things: set a goal, get a plan, stay after it, it's adapt along the way. And that's when you're being consistent and you say, I got to change something. It's okay to change something, but continue after your goal. And let me just tell you, people think, okay, Kevin, you ran in a half marathon, you ran in 5 half marathons, you broke 90 in golf, things that you didn't think you could do with one hand. But you're done with your goals now. No, I'm not. And a goal that I had 3 years ago was I got to the point in broadcasting with college that I really thought that I wanted a shot at doing some NFL broadcasting. And I was told by an executive producer whose name I'll never say that I would never be on an NFL network because I was missing an arm. And you can see that, this is my prosthetic device and I'm missing an arm, and that because of that, it would be a distraction on national TV and that they wouldn't be listening and no one will. And Kevin, nothing personal, but you're without an arm and they're never going to put you in front of that many million of people. It might be okay for high school and college, but they'll never do that. Well, 2 years ago, the Eagles gave me an opportunity along with Herm Edwards and Hugh Douglas to do the Eagles preseason game. And I got that goal done. And I'm as proud as that as any goal I've achieved, because there again, somebody said it couldn't be done. And there's always, always a way. And sometimes you have to adapt along the way. And somebody will say, well, what did you adapt there? Well, I didn't do a regular season, but I got 4 games in as a broadcaster. And it's in the books that I was a broadcaster in the NFL. And maybe, hopefully, I've broken a barrier for somebody.
Right. Absolutely. Exactly. So, and I think that's a fabulous story. And again, it comes back to, these people that are supposedly experts, and no disrespect to them. But, you can't always listen to people that are experts. And a lot of times you probably shouldn't. Not that you shouldn't always. You should listen. I think maybe you should listen to everybody, but take what works for you and leave the rest. You don't have to go by what somebody else tells you.
I have another little saying, and it's everything's impossible until it isn't. And you go on the internet every day and you see something that nobody thought was possible, and somebody did it. And that's what you have to keep in mind. And I'm not saying, there can only be one president of the United States and that sort of stuff, but set your goals a little higher than you really think. Reach. Because if you reach a little higher, you'll really surprise yourself.
Exactly. Just reach and then push. Just push. Keep at it, for sure. And don't wait for somebody to come and hand it to you on a silver platter, because that's not how success is ever achieved. I don't know anybody that just sitting there one day and then, had it given to him or her. You got to expect to work for it. You can't expect to sit around and watch TV all night and then magically be successful the next day.
Well, here's what I want to say to anybody out there that's getting what we're talking about today. There are so many people that are going to sit on their duffs and wait for something to happen. It's an opportunity for anybody out there that will adapt, set a goal, get a plan, stick after it. Because if everybody did that, it would really be a rat race. But I guarantee you that most of the people even listening today are not going to do a thing about their future or getting their goals set. They're going to wait for life to come at them as it's coming at them. Change that. Be in control of your own life.
Exactly. Yep, do it. And if that means you have to, if you're having issues with depression, I would imagine that means, okay, as part of your plan, you need to, deal with that, okay? Or if you have whatever issues, anxiety problems, or, those I think are real typical issues that a lot of folks might have to.
Tina, I raise my hand. I've had both of those issues, and I can tell you that plan works again. Do what you can when you're anxious. Do what you can when you're depressed. I had a depression problem in my second year in the NFL. I couldn't go tell the coaches I need some time off to get over this. I had to get up and go to practice every day. I just made sure that I got the essentials done during that bad time when I had a depression. And depressions will lift. They're not forever either. And when they lift, you go to work real hard. And when you have them, you do what you can.
Exactly. Make hay while the sun is shining, or whatever, saying that you want to use. But, there's a reason. Like all those old sayings, I think there's a really good reason that they're around and they're old sayings, because I think they're really pretty accurate.
Can I show you another saying that's a really good saying?
Please.
I've actually thought it's so good I put it on a T-shirt.
Love it. Tough times don't last. Tough people do. Boy, I love that. So true.
And, I tell this because when I go down to Walter Reed, I see these young 18, 19, 20-year-old men and women. Women are caught up in these IEDs. Those IEDs are not very discriminatory. I am impressed with the attitude that our service people have, because it's all about moving forward with them. I haven't had one of them say to me, oh, I wished I didn't sign up for the National Guard if I'd have known I was going to have to really go to war.
Yeah,
none of them said that. They say, how do I move forward?
Absolutely.
When will this phantom sensation go away? What kind of job will I get? Will I ever date again?
Right.
And I just am impressed with their attitude. It's all about attitude, and you will
Absolutely.
get by it if you have the right attitude.
Yeah, that's right. And you have every single person, as you said earlier, has the ability to have the right attitude. You don't have to be brilliant or fancy or beautiful or from a rich home or anything. Anybody can do that. And it's possible to change. And if you don't have it right now, you can get it. Um, at least that's my thought. I know I'm not the one being interviewed.
No, the human spirit is innate in every one of us. Light the fire before the crisis does. So many people will tell me after they've had a big crisis, I had no idea I was this tough. I had no idea that I'd be able to overcome this obstacle because, God gave us that ability and he's going to not give you anything you can't handle, but you got to light that flame to the human spirit to get you moving.
Absolutely. And actually, and speaking of that, along the way, did you have people that were helpful to you, either parents or siblings or your wife or friends? I mean, you mentioned Rocky being one of those, because I think that it's important for people to not try to necessarily do it all him or herself. I think that you should look to other people to sort of support you. Humans are real social creatures, and I think that if you can find that, it tends to make the difficult things easier. Do you think that's true?
Oh, I don't know where I'd be without family and friends and even enemies. It's amazing. It's amazing how even enemies in tough times will put a hand on your shoulder because they are another human being. But I will tell you, there'll be people there for you. Two things I would tell young people. Make sure that you have friends and make sure that your friends are the type of people that make you better.
Very true.
And I will tell you that those type of friends will get you through any crises. Here comes the caveat. If you expect to get help, expect to give it back.
So true.
It's a two-way street. If they're there for you, you have to be there for them. And I'll tell you something else I have found as that being my philosophy. There is very little in life that's more fulfilling than being able to help another human being. And, being able to help another human being without that thing that I wonder what the payback will be. Just being able to say, I helped that person, and if I never get paid back, I feel good in my heart because of it.
Exactly. That's payment right there. Yeah. Just being able to do that. I think that's really true. And I would think most people feel that way because, again, humans are such social animals. We really are wired in our brains to want to work together and to get that sort of innate reward.
One of the things that I get from a lot of young people is, that 10% factor out there, the people that are mean, that are nasty. And I want to tell young people, it's not about you. Those people are unhappy with their own lives. You just happen to be the very first thing in front of them that they can take it out on. Right. And the sooner you learn that and not take it personally, the happier you'll be. Because people like to affect you to bring you down to their miserable level. Don't let that happen. Another little thing of Kevin Reilly's, don't let people rent space in your head, especially nasty people.
And you have control over that. And that can take some conscious effort, I think, to not let those things bother you, but it's possible. And you just need to learn how to do that. So cool. I know we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you about how I kind of met up with you was through the Insightful Player book that you are in. Chrissy Carew. She had written you into her book of the title of, as you know, is Insightful Players, which is a book of NFL players who do really amazing things, have done, are very inspirational. And now, how did you connect up with Chrissy, and what are your thoughts on being in the book? And now she has a game too as well.
Well, you talked about there's nice people everywhere, but there must be especially nice people up in the New England area. When I played with the Patriots, they were nice, and I happened to meet Chrissy. I think she found me through just Googling my website, and when she was looking for the Insightful Player, we called up and we got together online a couple times, and just some telephone conversations, and she interviewed me, and that's how we got it done. And her little vision was, again, we talk about fulfillment. Chrissy's done a lot of things in her life. She's a life coach, but she's really felt a need to get some positive stories out there with so many of the negative stuff that we see in the media every day. And so that's how we really got hooked up. And it's a tremendous job she's doing. And, we hope we can keep this thing going. I find when people say, well, you're a role model, no, that's nice, but I'm still a human being. I still have flaws. I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to move in the right direction. And most of the guys in the inspirational, book that she wrote, Insightful Players, are trying to move in the right direction. And that's the battle. So that's what she's trying to do, is give these kids out there and even young adults, a little guidepost that it can be done. And there are people out there that are successful because they care about other human beings.
Exactly. Right. Absolutely true. And really and truly care. And I love that. I don't know. So I know we have to finish up. So real quick, website, Twitter feeds, how could people get more information about you, listen to more of what you have to say, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.kreilly.com, and Reilly is Reilly. And I'm on Facebook. So I've got about 2,500 followers because of my broadcasting, and I post on there going forward now pretty regularly, mostly about the football season. But my new manager has involved me with getting some positive things out there on a weekly basis. So you're going to be seeing some of my Reillyisms come across on a weekly basis out there, because I just think that, positive statements help people.
Exactly. Absolutely. So that's so cool. Well, I'm going to totally Facebook you as soon as we're done with this, that's for sure. So I really, really appreciate this. Is there anything last, we haven't covered in this almost 40 minutes that you think we should talk about, or you think we're pretty good?
Well, I tell you what, there is one thing that a very near and dear charity that I'm involved with, called the Desmoid Tumor Foundation. And that was my tumor. It's a very rare tumor, but since we have the internet, we're able to, talk to people all over the country. And so this is become my new charity to chase, because I'm so intimately involved with it. And we're going to have a run in October 21st in Philadelphia. It's going to be a big run. It's the Eagles' off date, so I won't be working that day, and I'll be able to run in the run. But it's called Running for Answers, and we're about 18 months away from a cure for this disease. So we're trying to raise money right now. Tina, you don't know how exciting that is, to be involved with this tumor for 30 years and know that in my lifetime I may see a cure for it.
Right.
I've promised the group that if we do cure it within 18 months, we're still going to have a run to celebrate the cure. So, and we'll just move on to the next thing. So if you're interested in running in it or donating to it, it's a Desmoid Tumor Research Foundation, DTRF, and you'll find it on my website.
Goodness. Well, this is great. Well, thank you so much for taking so much time to talk with us. And I loved talking to you, and I'm sure everyone loved hearing all these great things you have to say, and benefiting from your wisdom and your years of knowledge. So,
well, I don't know what happened to Chris today, but I'm glad you were there to do it. Really enjoyed talking to you, and hope we can do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we will. So cool. All right. Well, I will talk to you again soon then.
I'll leave you with one last message. There may be no such thing as magic, but there are miracles. But first, you got to believe.
Want to hear more of your favorite NFL players? Just go to www.insightfulplayer.com. At that site, you can order the Insightful Player book and play the Insightful Player game for free.